Hi, and welcome to Political Science 101. And today we are talking about political parties, and we are on chapter 7. Okay, so first we need to look at our learning objectives so we know what we are looking for to learn and understand in this chapter. Summarize the origins and development of the two-party system in the United States. Describe the current status of the two major parties. Explain how political parties function in our democratic system. Discuss the structure of American political parties. Describe the different types of third parties and how they function in American political systems. Okay, so it opens up again with two different stances. Does the Republican Party need a new strategy? And one is uncompromising conservatism is the only way forward, and the other is radical conservatism spells disaster in the long run. I really like the questions on the side where it talks about where do you stand and asks you some very pointed questions. Pastor Rick Warren, author of The Purpose-Driven Life, accepts that homosexuality is sin, but he also emphasizes his belief in God's love for all people. Why might some members of the religious right reject Warren's formula? And, that's just really a pointed question to really ask yourself. The second question, where do you stand? What could the Republicans do to win Latino votes? All right, and then it says explore this issue online. It has Rush Limbaugh's website, and also it has Rian Salam and Ross. It looks like Douthat are columnists who argue for conservative reform. And they also have a blog on listed there for www.nationalreview.com agenda. Okay, so, following real world issues of, should conservatism stay or should it be reformed? Is really interesting, and I just really encourage you to look at those websites and just look them over and their arguments. Okay, it has the introduction of political parties, a group of individuals who organize to win elections, operate the government, and determine policy. What I have learned the most, studying political science and teaching a new class is that, politics is supposed to create a form of compromise. I mean, if you think about it, the Senate and the House of Representatives was made out of a compromise. It was called the Connecticut Compromise or the Great Compromise, where, one group of people wanted, only certain amounts from each state. Another group wanted it based on population, so they put the two together. And that's really what politics and the spirit of politics really is supposed to be about. And this week, you are supposed to read George Washington's farewell address, and it is fantastic. I'd really like for you to read all of it. That's a primary source document. Pages on this certain document that I posted, pages 11 through 18, he discusses the evils of political parties, of the two-party system. And George Washington refused to join a political party. And this is it's amazing to me. Just his insight and wisdom and what he says it will do for our nation. So really want you to focus on pages 11 to 18 and how relevant it is today, 200 years later. They have a brief introduction of the political parties. What I love about George Washington, he set an amazing precedent. What he did basically was his first presidential cabinet. He refused to join a political party. He put 2 Federalists on his presidential cabinet and 2 anti-Federalists, which would be like putting, taking your presidential cabinet and splitting it and having, half Democrats, half Republicans. Well, what's going to happen? Well, they're going to be forced to sit in a room together and realize that they're, people day after day after day. They're going to realize they have more similarities than differences. They're not going to be misrepresented. They're not going to be seen as monsters. Yeah, there might be some little spats or feuding, which there was in George Washington's. But George Washington wanted to hear both sides. So he sat them down. He said nothing. you know, when Congress was passing a law, he refrained from saying very much. And then what he did was he sat each side down and said, tell me your pros and cons, you know, for this bill, and tell me your pros and cons for this bill. What a wise man. What a very wise man. Can you imagine if the next presidential candidate did that? Can you imagine if they actually put, you know, half Republicans, half Democrats on their presidential board? That would be absolutely mind-blowing to hear both sides. It's amazing to me. So just thinking about that is really cool. Now, I will tell you what happened at the end of that. Thomas Jefferson got his feelings hurt a little bit, and he quit. And George Washington was very upset with him because he said, I need to hear your voice. I may not always choose your ideologies, but I need to hear your voice. And I'm very upset with you, you know, for quitting. So there was a little bit, you know, there were issues, but, you know, if I feel like it was such a wise thing to put them both on the same presidential board or cabinet. Okay. The first political parties, you got the Federalists and the Anti-Federalists. You have the Federalist Papers that were written by John Adams and Alexander Hamilton, and they were for a larger government, and they were trying to push the Constitution to be accepted, ratified into the United States. Okay. The Federalists generally thought that a republic should be ruled by its wealthiest and best educated. Yikes. Okay. This isn't really a clear-cut Democrat and Republican party, the Federalists and Anti-Federalists. You got a little bit of each strain in here, but there were separate parties. One was for big government, which would be the Democrats today. One was for a smaller government, which would be the Republicans' ideology today. But it's not aligned exactly like it is today. Okay. Then you have Jefferson. We have some realigning of the two major parties. And then I love the definitions of realigning, a process which the popular support for the relative strength of the party shifts and the party is reestablishes with different coalitions of supporters. Okay, you have realignment, you have de-alignment. I love these terms. De-alignment, where did it go? Oh, come on. Oh, well, it's further back, I guess. Then you have supporters with Andrew Jackson, began to call themselves Democrats. Okay, and they were for the smaller farmers and the urbanized workers. Then you have, you know, Abraham Lincoln, who was a clear Republican, under the banner of the New Republican Party, okay? And then a lot of people ask the question, okay, when did this switch happen? Because obviously the slaves, when they were freedmen, they began to vote Republican, okay, because they were on the pathway to give slaves their freedom because of Abraham Lincoln. When did this switch occur? And that is such a great question. I've had that before. And it happened in the 1930s. And it's on your page on page 149, and I love that they point it out because that's a question I often get in class. You know, someone will raise their hand and say, "When did the switch occur?" And it occurred after the Great Depression, the New Deal, FDR. There were several letters. It's 11 o'clock. Sorry, there were several letters in the I guess it would be the National Archive. When you send a president a letter, oftentimes it is put in their National Library, their National Archive. There were several letters that I have read talking to FDR, because what was happening in the South is that they were getting all this, you know, blankets and food for the Great Depression and all these different things to help relieve the extreme poverty. And some of the whites in certain cities in the South were not giving it to the poorest of the poor. When there's a Great Depression and there's poverty, severe poverty for the majority, which would be the whites, then there is even more severe poverty for the minorities, okay, because there's no one to look out for them. So there were some, there's these amazing letters. I would love, I should dig them out and post them. I had my last class read them, and they were letters from African Americans to FDR asking him to please help. You know, they weren't getting the food. They weren't getting the blankets in the South. And they're in his Library of Congress. I believe I found them, or his presidential library. They have copies. And it was just amazing because you can see their writing, you know, the struggling with the writing. You know, they've newly learned how to write, and they're asking the president for help. Absolutely amazing. So he did help. Okay, not probably as much as we would have liked him to, but he did. And he looked into it, and there was kind of a new forming of a civil rights plank underneath FDR in their party platform. And that is when the switch happened, because those African Americans were finally getting help because they were even poorer than the white poor. And that's really disturbing and problematic. Okay. Then you have, let's see, the rolling realignment. Under President Nixon, a lot of Democrats were disillusioned with the Democratic Party, so a lot of them kind of began to drift towards a new Republican alignment, which Reagan actually cemented and helped with his new Republican coalition. Coalition is one of your vocabulary words. Okay. And we talk about the different, states. The 2012 election on page 151. Right here, the primary here. All right. I want to take a moment and just talk about I was a poll worker in the 2008 elections. It was absolutely an amazing experience for me. And it was the election between Barack Obama and, Sarah Palin was a vice president. And, her running mate. I'm going to look it up because it's not coming to me right now. So it was absolutely an amazing experience for me. As a history teacher at that time. And I, election candidates, I just can't believe I can't remember. John McCain, yes, I saw him speak as well. Anyway, I worked the polls, and it was absolutely a delightful experience, and really good for me. To see how the system works, and they get along. All right, so in the 2012 elections, I'll talk more about my experience there in the next section. Realignment, de-alignment, and tipping. Really important terms. De-alignment, here's the definition. Among voters, a growing detachment from both major political parties. Okay, is de-alignment. Tipping. Tipping. Oh, tipping was one of your vocabulary words as well. Where did it go? Anyway, here it is. Tipping is due to migration between states or between nations, or even due to changes in education levels and occupations. This could result in a tip of a state from one party to another. So maybe it voted, one way for years and years and years, and then due to all these different factors, the state tips a different way. Primary, a preliminary election held for the purpose of choosing a party's final candidate. We just went through primaries. Okay. You have this section on 153 that wealthy people are Republicans, and this is perception, not reality, because things are shifting and changing due to the technology moguls, and they are shifting towards being more democratic. And it talks about Mark Zuckerberg and how he is a Democrat and says, use my taxes to help social agendas. Okay, we'll have part 2 and continue talking about political parties. Thank you.